What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, March 14th, 2019. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. It's also Pi Day, as in 3/14. And I'm sure some of the techies will be out there looking at their digital watches, waiting for all the digits to line up this afternoon about 3 o'clock. So we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open at 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, and ready to answer your call, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and observations here. Now, not too long ago, there was this story where these Russian telephone pranksters, and they're viral celebrities, Vovan and Lexus, they have this long history of prank calling very famous, prominent people and basically putting them on the spot. And they got through to Elliot Abrams and got him to basically admit on the tape that at least at the time of the call, there was no plan for a direct military intervention into Venezuela. Well, it turns out Juan Guaido got fooled by these same pranksters and basically came on out claiming to be representatives from the Swiss banks or rather from the Swiss president Uli Maurer, and to talk about freezing Venezuela's funds. And Guaido went to air with that. Guaido claimed on air to have spoken to Maurer about freezing Venezuelan government accounts. And of course, the Swiss president came on out and said, no, that didn't happen. You and I have never talked. So a little bit of an embarrassment there for Guaido himself. Interesting little article. This is from Russia Today. It's written by Lee Camp, and it's talking about how he was 23 when we invaded Iraq and basically went in there, thinking, yeah, weapons of mass destruction, it's necessary. And then, of course, had his awakening about how we were all lied to, which is why he's saying, yeah, it's obvious this time the government and the media are trying to lie people into another war, this one with Venezuela. And they're out there with these claims that Venezuelan people are desperate for necessities like toothpaste, while independent journalists are down there with camcorders and video cameras showing piles of affordable toothpaste in Caracas and people, milling around and buying stuff. Of course the government lies to us. What do you think would happen if the government got up and said, look, we're going to invade this country over here, and we're doing it to get control of their natural resources and their oil and their tantalum and all that kind of stuff. And we don't really have a good reason other than greed to invade this country. They haven't done anything to us. But we're going to take your money to pay for the invasion. We're going to take your children to carry out the invasion, and to say some of them are going to get killed and crippled. But hey, those are the breaks. Do you think anybody would support the war? Of course not. Every leader in history that wants to initiate a war has to lie and trick their people into it, without exception. Well, with the possible exception of Alexander the Great, because everybody behind him say, yeah, let's go take all the goodies here. So over in Syria, at this point, it is very obvious Assad has won the war. They're still trying to call it a civil war over there at Outline. It wasn't a civil war. It was a covert armed insurrection backed by the United States using these various groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda as proxies. It was an attempt to overthrow Assad by force. It has failed. Failed. The U.S. is still trying to find a reason to stay there so they can sort of like pretend that they didn't lose this one. How can we have lost? We're still in Syria. It goes on forever. But this article is out there saying, can Syria survive an Israeli attack? And yes, we're going to be talking about those 2 rockets that were fired at Tel Aviv a little bit later in the show. I know it's a top story right now. But with Egypt and Jordan having ratified peace following the Second Gulf War, Israel no longer faces any neighboring state with the capability and desire to wage war against it. So it's in a much stronger strategic position. And we know that Netanyahu is now out there lobbying the United States to recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan. And as of now, the State Department no longer uses the phrase Israeli occupied when they talk about the Golan. They use Israeli controlled. And even more worryingly, they made the same change to the description of the West Bank. They're not using occupation any longer. So we can see what's in the wind over there. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. The Pentagon announced that it has allocated $300 million to support the U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces fighting Daesh, as well as $250 million to secure the borders of Syria's neighbors. But we can't get money to secure our own borders. So the funding is part of the 2020 budget. And again, just dragging things out in Syria so they don't have to admit that they lost that one. Same situations going on in Afghanistan. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Saad Hariri has requested almost $3 billion in funding from the international community in order to support long-term projects to facilitate the return of Syrian refugees to their home country. And I imagine after this hard winter, all those Syrians who made it up to Europe are now thinking about, yeah, we want to go back where it's a little bit warmer. Getting on back to the issue of a possible Israeli attack on Syria, there was an article that came on out in Sputnik News where Israeli media is claiming to have satellite pictures showing that the Syrian government and Hezbollah were building a secret precision missile factory in western Syria. And somehow they also roped Iran in there. Syria and Hezbollah are building Iranian missiles. They're all in it together. And Israeli satellite intelligence firm ImageSat International released satellite images which are described as probably indications of a missile production facility. Interestingly enough, there's a caption on the image itself that says there does not appear to be any manufacturing at the site, nor it can be confirmed that any part of it is Iranian. So, okay, over at the Senate, yesterday the Senate passed a resolution to end U.S. support for Saudi Arabia in the Yemen war. And the Senate voted 54 to 46. The resolution passed with mostly Democratic support, a handful of Republicans crossing the aisle. Unfortunately, that's not a veto-proof majority, and I'm expecting Trump will veto it to keep the war going. Meanwhile, Eric Prince is still trying to convince the U.S. government to go ahead and withdraw U.S. troops in Afghanistan and contract with him to send his mercenaries in there to do whatever it is that they're doing. Guard the opium poppies, I guess. This next story is very troubling on a couple of different levels. It's from Fort Russ, and it has to do with the way that Donald Trump has sort of messed up the progress he was making in his relations with Poland. And obviously, when you're talking about potential confrontations with Russia, Poland's right there. They're going to get it. And they were talking about more NATO money. They were talking about building a new base that was going to be called Fort Trump. But Donald Trump apparently didn't get the memo that the Poles did not help the Nazis. Remember that big stink from a couple of weeks ago where I think it was Netanyahu came on out and accused Poland of helping the Nazis with the Holocaust. And Poland came on out and said, no, there were a few Poles that were forced to help the Nazis. And they even offered to go on in and exhume this graveyard to demonstrate that Poles were being killed right along with the Jews, and Israel said, no, don't need to do that. But Trump basically is insulting the Polish political class in public, and it's a sudden change in position, and even went so far as to tell Poland that they should give property to Jewish Holocaust groups. And it's a clear example of how Israel is, in fact, in control of our government. This one, though, may be so obvious that Americans will continue to wake up about what's going on. Okay. On the corporate media, they're still talking about this rocket attack on Tel Aviv, and I guess I should go ahead and deal with that one right now. The story is that 2 rockets were fired from the north end of the Gaza Strip toward Tel Aviv. One was intercepted by the Iron Dome. The other one just fell someplace but didn't cause any damage. Now, that's got to be a substantial rocket, because we're talking a distance of about 40 miles, which kind of raises the question just how somebody could get those rockets into the northern edge of the Gaza Strip. Or maybe they were actually fired from outside the fence on the Gaza Strip. We know Netanyahu needs a war. He's losing in the polls to Gantz. And he's been talking tough to Syria, he's been talking tough to everybody, pounding the war drums. And I feel bad for the people in Gaza, because they've got a pounding coming. And it won't be long in that happening. I think I was talking the other day about, I'm expecting there to be a false flag to get Netanyahu the war that he needs to run his political campaign on. Because in Israel, unfortunately, killing Palestinians is good politics. Meanwhile, up in Ukraine, the polls are showing that Poroshenko has 0 chance of winning re-election. And apparently, Yulia Tymoshenko is in 3rd place. And there's a television actor, Vladimir Zelensky, who's best known for having played the role of the Ukrainian president on a popular TV show, is the leader in the polls by a wide margin. Very strange. I remember when we had an actor as president, wasn't all that good here. Now, a little bit of good news. Officials of India and Pakistan held a meeting with the aim of de-escalating tensions. This is the first meeting since the sharp deterioration of relations between the 2 countries around the disputed region of Kashmir. Now, going on back to King Solomon, why don't they just divide it? Of course, the people of Kashmir aren't going to like that. The people of Kashmir want to be a country of Kashmir, which, under the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights, they have a right to that. They have a right to have a referendum and say they either want to be part of India or part of Pakistan, or they want to be an independent country. This has just gone on for so long. Alrighty, now getting on back to the Gaza rockets. Rocket alerts are blaring throughout central Israel. And again, the Iron Dome missile defense system intercepted one of the rockets, which means it was flying straight steady, which argues against it being a home-built rocket. The other rocket landed in an open area, no damage caused here. And a Palestinian source in Gaza told Haaretz the rockets were fired from the northern part of the enclave, they think, but nobody knows who did it. Nobody's taking credit for it. And depending upon where you're standing, I mean, unless you're right there at the launch site, how do you know which side of that border fence was the launching point? Wouldn't be the first time Israel fired rockets at itself. They were caught doing that with Syria some years ago. Meanwhile, the political campaigns are proceeding apace, and blue and white leader Benny Gantz is already out there trying to match Netanyahu for the blood and gore talk, and he's out there threatening he's going to kill all the Hamas leaders. He's going to resume the targeted killings and assassinations. There's going to be zero tolerance for firing on the Israeli South. And so as far as the people of Gaza and the West Bank are concerned, it almost doesn't matter who wins the election. It's still going to get worse. Okay. On March 30th, the Gaza Great March of Return protests will mark their one-year anniversary, and I think it's probably going to be a huge crowd showing up here. And the Gaza Strip has seen thousands of residents taking part every single Friday in these protests. And it's attracted the world's attention, which is why Israel continues to shoot at the protesters, trying to get them to give up. And it's a very well-organized, nonviolent action, and it may be signaling a new trend in Palestinian politics, where there might be the rise of a new political structure, not Palestinian Authority and not Hamas, but something else. Because it does seem like the Palestinians are ready for a change here. Okay, the Palestine Advocacy Project is relaunching a billboard ad campaign honoring the heroism and self-sacrifice of the Palestinian medics who put their lives on the line to rescue and treat the injured protesters in the Great March of Return demonstrations. And it does take a lot of courage, because these medical personnel know they'll be targeted. And the billboard features the Palestinian martyr Razan al-Najjar, 21. She was a young nurse paramedic, and she got killed caring for the wounded demonstrators. And she was shot by an Israeli sniper wearing her white nurse's coat with her hands up to show that she was unarmed. All right, we got a caller waiting on the line here, Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I've heard a lot of callers over the last couple months. They call in and complain, and one of their complaints about Trump is that, he had a Republican Congress and he couldn't get the wall built. Well, I think today in the Senate, with the 12 Republican senators trying to override the president's decision to declare an emergency, kind of should put an end to that argument. Now, you can say what you want about Trump, but he does want that wall. But these Republicans, these rhinos, these Republican backstabbers, even when he had using that, hammer, because it's not, look what happened today in the Senate. 12 Republican senators, backstab the president. Most Republicans are like Democrats. They don't want that wall. It's cheap labor for their Wall Street friends. And, so that the whole, and whenever I hear that, it's like, all right, I can criticize Trump. I am a Trump supporter, but let's be fair when we criticize him. And that's really not a fair complaint.
You raise a good point. You raise a good point that, just because he had a Republican Congress did not mean that they were going to support his agenda. In fact, that was made clear on multiple occasions. We know why the Democrats want the open borders. They want those illegal immigrant votes. They're on board with the New World Order, one world government, blend everybody together agenda. As far as the Republicans, I'm not sure how strong the argument about cheap wages is. American workers have already been driven down to the point where they can barely get by. I don't know how much more they can be pushed. You're not going to get these illegal immigrants to work for less money unless they're being paid under the table, which means they're not paying taxes. Anyway, Joe, we got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the phone call, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Peter in California. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I'm going to switch, with your permission, to something that's in the news, but you probably haven't gotten to yet. It's the FBI admissions scandal thing with all the colleges and the rich people and so on.
Yes.
And one of the points I wanted to make, Mike, is that in reading all this, I read that they assigned 200 agents to this all over the country. You can figure that by it's thousands of man hours, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I always ask myself, in lieu of not really doing anything about Comey or the Clinton Foundation or any of the other things that they have not moved on, Hillary Clinton's emails, a lot of important stuff, on how they choose what they do move on. And you think back with the Justice Department, with the Fast and Furious, where they partnered with the Sinaloa drug cartel, probably still are.
Yes.
Allowed them to, of course, smuggle drugs unfettered into the United States, supplied them with arms, and then took credit for all the Sinaloa turned in all their competitors.
Yes.
The same amount of drugs were coming in. It's just that the FBI made some arrests and looked real good, and their budgets went up. And you wonder, with all the stuff with Comey and their surveillance and, some of the stuff that's been going on with them, how they picked this. I mean, we're talking about 50 families or something that they've uncovered so far. They're all rich.
Yep.
They're all rich, and 50 several wealthy, very wealthy, endowed institutions, Harvard, Yale, USC, Georgetown.
Well, let's be honest.
Stanford.
There's no evidence yet that these institutions knew this was going on. It's not like they hung out a sign saying admissions for sale.
Right. But you wonder how they say they accidentally stumbled on this, then they assigned 200 agents. But I want to submit something as theoretically, and that is that there was also a scandal about 2 years ago for NCAA basketball recruiting, where they implicated Duke and North Carolina and
yes.
Kentucky, all the blue bloods, and nothing really. The Louisville coach lost her job, an assistant coach or two lost her job, but nothing really. And you wonder, the FBI was involved in that too, and assigning with all the things to do with espionage and political corruption and drug stuff and everything else, that they're doing this, right? Rich people trying to get their kids into college and so on. And I'm thinking, well, you know what? They're shaking down their institutions that they can say, for instance, for both basketball thing and this, and say, geez, we've uncovered some connections with you and you also, you and your kids, Mr. CEO or whatever, and the institutions. But, we're not sure whether to move on it or not. And they're waiting, of course, for their under the table payoffs.
Well, no. What's going on here is public relations. The FBI knows it doesn't have the best image, so they're always on the lookout for a case that's going to get a lot of media attention, as these cases tend to do, but that are going to be easy to basically solve, or are already, as in the case of the admission scandal. Basically, it's already solved. Somebody just handed it to them on a silver platter, and they can come on in and do their FBI stuff and look really good in the media. And I think that's the primary driving force behind that phenomenon that you've noticed. They want the cases with the sizzle, the cases people are going to be, paying attention to on TV, so that they can come off looking good.
It's a big win. I totally agree with you, Mike, but there's also a shakedown potential here, too.
Yes.
Rich donors, your name's on the list, and I don't know, should we move on this or not? And this college over here with an endowment of $1 billion, do you really want to go through this, or maybe we can reach some other accommodation? I'm telling you, that's the way they do things as well. And it's just, whenever I see the FBI doing something, the first thing I jump at is what you just said. The second thing is I go, well, how are they making money off it? Is there a way they can make money off this? Like, I'm sure they're making money off the Fast and Furious, It's just, they are so thoroughly discredited that you just have to ask every time, why are they assigning 200 agents to, rich people help their kids get into school. Okay, yeah, all right. It's unfortunate, but okay.
Yeah, it's not like this is a new thing. We were talking the other day about how Jared Kushner got his admission into Harvard after his father pledged something, a couple of $1 million endowment, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's legal, and that's what these stupid people should have done.
Yes,
because that's considered proper. I have a cousin that did that actually, but it's they were stupid enough to pay $400,000 to get on, like a water polo team or something. It's ridiculous, some of this stuff.
Yeah, it is, and we're going to be talking about it later in the show. But Peter, I'm going to have to let you go because we've got to take another break for commercial. We got another caller waiting on the line. We will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go back to the phones to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Hi, Pete from Los Angeles. Or if you're not living in Los Angeles, it must just be in somewhere else in California. But Mike, he missed, like, he didn't. Basically, this case with the kids getting into the colleges was from another case the FBI was investigating.
Yes.
And basically, the person they were investigating say, hey, I got this thing for you. Probably, made a sweetheart deal to get off at a lesser charge. But I got this big case for you, and basically these people are just super rich. They're not the ultra. Look, this has nothing to do with Trump. This has been going on for probably more than a year, at least.
Yes.
This has to do with the super rich, and you got the ultra rich. Two different categories. The ultra rich will donate buildings to the colleges, like Peter said, endowments and all. These people can't afford to do that, so they do the cheaper thing, the cheaper way, And but the whole Mike, the point is, like, this proves the system's rigged. It don't. I mean, on the lower the rich end and the higher the rich end, the system's rigged. This, like you said, it's been going on for a long time. But this shows you what it goes on all around the world. Now you know what system is what we got. That's it, right?
Yes.
This is the system we have. It's just it's sad. I'm thinking, like, imagine you're on a waiting list, Mike, waiting, like, to get into one. And then these people, like, get in on athletic scholarship on the soccer, on a soccer thing, and then quit the soccer team. These people are never going to be engineers. They're never going to be bricklayers.
They're going to graduate with their liberal arts degree, and then they're going to, go back to the cocktail party circuit.
That's what it's about, Mike. And you know what's sad? The kids should be kicked out. They're involved in this because this is what their parents taught them. You realize that? Like, this is what their parents basically have taught them to do. Their parents are no good, and the kids are no good. Sad to say, but basically, it's street creds like the Heathers or the cliques, that group of people. They're just going there to continue to meet other rich people and stuff. They're not going there to learn a trade or to help their fellow human being. Did you see there was a video for the daughter? She come out and said, I'm going there to party and this or that. I mean, they don't care. And you know what's funny, Mike? Like, they can fail the class, they'll still get passed because they got paid off. So I mean, like I said, it's a joke.
It really is. It really is. Now, let me just make a comment. I mean, throughout history, there's going to be corruption in every society, but there are different levels of corruption. And societies can survive a small amount of corruption. But when the corruption gets as out of hand as it is, the society will collapse. That's what happened to ancient Rome. That's what happened to the Soviet Union. That's what's happening here and now.
And Mike, I want to switch real quick, if I still have time, about Joe in Tennessee. I agree with. I mean, I voted for Trump. I keep saying that I voted for Trump, and I had like faith in him. But like the states that are for Trump, like the governors, there's nothing, no wall being built. There's walls being repaired, but there's nothing being done. Like I mean. I can't vote for this guy again. He put in Elliott Abrams. I just I don't know how much more I can say about Elliott Abrams. I mean, he put Elliott Abrams in, Mike Pompeo and John Bolton. And Mike, by the way, did you see Mike Pompeo? Like the video of him at this Texas energy meeting? Like, I mean, you got to watch the video. It's like he's basically an enforcer of you got to buy our energy, not their energy, it blew my mind. I'm like, this is like thuggery and basically mafia. I mean, it's like, it used to be behind the scenes. It's like in your face now. I want everybody to watch that video. I mean, it blew my mind. It's just, I couldn't believe it. Like, it's just out there in your face.
Well, we're seeing it all over the world. I mean, the way they're trying to arm twist Turkey to abandon the S-400 deal and go with the Patriot. We're seeing it with efforts to get Germany to not do business with Huawei. Pressure to get Europe to drop the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Yeah, it's commerce through coercion.
But it's not going to work, Mike, because they're just pushing people away. Because, the regular people of Europe's looking at this, because it's all messed up in Europe, but, it's just like, they're saying, like, what's going on in America? You got to question, like, what the heck's going on with this country? It's like, but it's just a bizarre thing. And you know what, Mike? Like, I'm thinking, wait a minute. You're telling Russia not to buy, not to sell energy to Germany, natural gas, but there's no alternative. Like, liquefied natural gas, that's not an alternative. It's not even in the same category as pipelines, Yes. But there's just it's just bizarre. And it's just definitely, you know what, Mike? I think it's still on the decline. Like, this country's definitely, it's like they're feeling they got to lash out now, because I think they know we're being left behind, I think.
I think that's it. I think this is a last desperate gasp to reassert the empire over the rest of the world, and I think it's doomed to failure. Anyway, Dustin, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go here and switch over to Bob in New Jersey. Aloha, Bob. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. How are you? I say aloha to you and to Claire. Mike, just a thought and just a question. It seems quite coincidental that the FBI, Lisa Page's testimony was released the other day, and bingo, we have a release of the FBI going in on something which, compared to Lisa Page's testimony, is utter trivia, and Bruce Orr just before that. So could it be that this was a distraction from the black eye that the FBI was getting with the release of those documents?
Oh, I agree, because apparently this investigation to the scandal's been going on for a long time. Why did they go public now? To give the media something with sizzle to report on, so they don't report on the stuff that's in the Lisa Page testimony, which is why the independent media exists, for those people who understand they need to know certain things that are going on right now.
Right. That's all I have to say, Mike.
Okay, well, Bob, thank you very much for the phone call, and we're going to let you go. The phone lines are now empty. Getting on back to the international news here. So, not too long ago, the United Nations released their report on the 2018 Gaza protests, which concluded that Israeli officers and their political leaders may have committed war crimes or crimes against humanity. There are even people saying it's time to go to The Hague. And the Human Rights Council's Commission of Inquiry found that Israeli soldiers intentionally used live ammunition against civilians who included children, women, journalists, health workers, and people with disabilities. And so now it just needs to get out there into the world. And you'll probably have noticed that corporate media is not reporting on this one either. But I think the world is waking up to what's going on here. And it actually kind of undermines this next article, Middle East Monitor, which is bemoaning the implications of normalization with Israel. And the context of the article is that people have just sort of come to accept what Israel is doing to Palestine as normal, as the way things are supposed to be, because they've been that way for a very long time. It's just the way things are. What can we do? Shrug of shoulders and so forth. But that may be changing. We were talking, I think it was just yesterday, about the decline in public support for Israel here in the United States. It's at a 10-year low and getting lower here. Now, apparently, there's a new scandal breaking in Israel, and it has to do with Israel's chief rabbi, David Lau, who's openly admitted using DNA tests to determine a person's Jewish ancestry before allowing them to marry in Israel and be granted Jewish status. Now, the practice, as so far revealed, has only been used on Jews from states that once comprised the Soviet Union, meaning what they're actually testing for is Ashkenazi. And of course, this has led to accusations of discrimination and racism from prominent Israeli politicians, including former Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman. So the practice was first made public in a report from religious service NGO Item that was published just last week. And the report detailed the accounts of around 20 Jewish couples who'd been asked to undergo the procedure to determine one or both spouses were genetically Jewish, which is a condition of Jewish marriage registration that only the chief rabbinate can grant. Well, again, there really is no such thing as a Jewish gene. And if they're doing this DNA test only on Jews from the former Soviet Union, then yes, what they're testing for are genetic markers of the Khazars. Judaism is a religion. It is not a race. Okay, we're going to go back to the phones here. Carol in Idaho, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. Thank you. I just had a very quick response to Dustin's question. He said that I think that the Europeans are looking at America and saying, what happened to America? Yeah, we're having problems over here in Europe and throughout the globe, but we were counting, I'm paraphrasing, of course, we were counting on America to be better and safer. What happened? My response to Dustin's question is simply, hello, the Bolsheviks got a hold of America. Same ones who wrote the protocols of the learned elders of Zion and some of their other wicked Talmudic writings, they told us they told the world what they were going to do to us, and they've done it, and it's just so sad. That's what I wanted to say, Michael.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call, Carol. We're going to let you go. Oh, and we have Matt in Ohio. Aloha, Matt. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. I just wanted to ask you if you believed in miracles. I know you don't really believe in God, but
well,
if you look
I would say that a miracle is simply something without explanation, like magic. But it doesn't mean that there isn't an explanation behind it.
Would you say that tree could never happen by accident?
What could never happen by accident?
A tree or a bee or a flower?
Basically, it's all the result of evolution. When you have a planet that's forming that has a liquid medium, in our case water, you're going to see all of these raw chemicals just floating around in there, and they'll combine and recombine. They're going to be driven by the sun and by lightning until you finally get a molecule that replicates itself by consuming the other molecules near it. And at that point, life starts. And everything else follows from that.
Doesn't the complexity of order required for anything to be alive surpass random chance and accident?
No, I don't think so. When you give when you look at the time scales that we're talking about, I mean, evolution has always shown that it tends toward more complex life forms, and the fossil record confirms that. The earliest life on Earth was extraordinarily simple, and then as you go, further along that timeline, it becomes more and more complex.
What if the whole timeline is a lie and it doesn't go
Matt,
back?
I hear where you're coming from, and this is not a show where we're going to talk about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. You have your opinion, and I have my opinion. My opinion has some more empirical facts to back it up, but we won't belabor the point. Thank you very much for the phone call, and we're going to let you go here. All right, getting on back to the news here. Over in Turkey, Turkish President Erdogan said yesterday that his country would stand up for the Al-Aqsa Mosque against any Israeli attack, and described Netanyahu as a tyrant who massacres children, which, if you think about it, and what's going on down there at the Great March of Return, that's absolutely true. So he was speaking at the inauguration of a new public service programs in Ankara. Erdogan said the Turks would not remain silent regarding the dangers facing the Al-Aqsa Mosque, even if the world does. And we have been reporting on this radio show for quite some time about these escalating provocations where settlers will go into Al-Aqsa Mosque, they'll conduct Jewish religious rituals there. All of this stuff is designed to provoke a response. And it's no secret that the Israelis would like to just scrape off the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque and build a new third temple there, although technically it would be Temple 3.5. And again, it reminds me of that wonderful movie, Kingdom of Heaven, where Balian is saying, you know, if you try and attack us, I'll burn down everything in this city that drives men mad. And Salahuddin says, I wonder if it would not be better that if you do. You look about how much bloodshed and pain and suffering over this one little tiny piece of ground. And by the way, Israeli archaeologists, and I emphasize Israeli archaeologists, are now convinced that the real location of the first temple is not the Temple Mount, but it's about 150 yards off to the south-southeast. And that platform at the Temple Mount is actually the remains of a Roman fort. But people will believe what they want to believe. Okay, the Palestinian Authority's Minister of Foreign Affairs is condemning field executions carried out by the Israeli occupation forces against Palestinians. And the ministry is calling for rights groups to try and document these crimes. Apparently, this was triggered by the execution of 3 Palestinians in the besieged Gaza Strip and the occupied West Bank, basically saying the Israelis' propaganda machine just comes up with fake claims. Oh, they were going to attack us. We thought they had a bomb, to justify these random killings. Got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Do you remember a while back when Israel and Lebanon were making stink face at each other, and Israel kept declaring that they had to fortify the border there because Hezbollah was digging tunnels under the border to try and get into Israel and tunnel under schools to steal children and all that kind of stuff? Well, former Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Yaalon basically admitted that Israeli officials have for years lied about the existence of these Hezbollah tunnels beneath the Lebanon-Israel border. And speaking to Israel's Army Radio, Yaalon said that the Israeli officials lied about the tunnels for years before they decided to carry out an operation to destroy them earlier this week. And he said, we did it to mislead the other side. There is an exaggeration in the way the operation was presented, and I hope it did not hurt us. So, meanwhile, Lebanon is saying that Israel is violating water borders in the process of oil exploration. Israel apparently licensed a company to exploit an area for oil and gas near what Israel says is a disputed border. Lebanon says, no, you're inside our territorial waters. And the two countries do have this unresolved maritime border dispute over a sea zone of about 330 square miles. And it extends along the edge of 3 of Lebanon's energy blocks. It's all about the oil. It's all about the energy. It's all about the money, 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 money. Iranian Defense Minister Amir Hatami yesterday warned that his country will respond firmly if the Israeli Navy targets Iranian oil shipments. This is in response to Netanyahu coming on out some days ago saying that, well, Iran is smuggling their oil to China. They're in defiance of the U.S. sanctions. That cannot be allowed. And first he said the Israeli army might intervene. Then he said, well, really, it should be up to the international community. But now Iran is saying that, yes, they have the military capabilities to counter any Israeli intervention unless Israel's backed up by the United States. I wouldn't be too sure about that because we're not really sure what Israel's naval capability is. We do know they've got some Dolphin-class submarines, and they have been caught going through that Suez Canal. Over in Africa, on the East Coast, apparently, and this was news to me, the U.S. is continuing the economic sabotage of Eritrea. Apparently trying to do to Eritrea what they're doing to Venezuela, what they're doing to North Korea, what they're doing to Iran. So apparently UN sanctions against Eritrea were lifted recently, but unfortunately the damage has already been done. Apparently this has been going on for 9 years. Now this story, this one out of WTKR. North Korea defies the UN with arms sales and oil imports. And yeah, it's this idea that the US and the UN are meddling in other people's countries. Anyway, we got to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Apparently, there is a U.S. warship that has been quarantined at sea. This is the USS Fort McHenry amphibious warship, and apparently the illness actually broke out last December and wasn't announced, wasn't made public. Apparently somebody over at CNN was saying, where's the ship gone? And apparently 25 sailors and Marines aboard the ship have been diagnosed with parotitis, which causes symptoms similar to mumps. And the most recent case was reported on March 9th. I imagine that's going to make the rest of the crew on board that ship nervous. It's just a waiting time until they come down with it. As you probably heard, because it's been one of the news stories that the corporate media did cover, Gambino crime boss Frank Cali was gunned down in front of his home around 9:20 p.m. last night. And his wife and young children were inside. People were hearing the gunshots. And this is the first hit on a New York City Mafia Don in more than 30 years. So I hope we're not getting a gang war cranking up. I thought we left all that sort of stuff behind. But no, apparently not. Now, a lot of people are still responding to Tulsi Gabbard's appearance on the Stephen Colbert show. And a lot of people are commenting on how Colbert really did step out of his normal method of doing interviews to just go after her. No jokes, just smearing Tulsi Gabbard to her face and really just in attack mode. And following up on that, apparently over at CNN, the foreign policy gatekeepers are vilifying Tulsi Gabbard for her anti-intervention dissent. Oh, she hates war. We can't have that. And it does seem like they're piling on to derail Tulsi Gabbard and get her out of there as quickly as possible. And there may be another reason. I mean, despite all of her problems, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is still considered the darling of the Democratic Party. And if you're not paying attention to the independent media, you'd think, wow, she's doing great things. I think she's being groomed to be the candidate in 2020, but Tulsi can get in her way because Tulsi's got the brains. and the experience. So on a gut level, I like Tulsi. She's got an uphill battle. And that really is a shame, because we need a truly anti-war president. And yes, every president we've had, going all the way back to Obama in 2008, is out there saying, well, yeah, as soon as I'm president, I'm going to end the wars. I'm going to bring all the people home. Now, on the independent media, of course, there has been a lot of criticism of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and the spin coming back from her supporters now is it's all haters. They're all haters. They're white supremacists. They can't stand her. That's the spin. And once again, that's how they respond when you talk about things like how her Green New Deal simply cannot work, and some of the other goofs she's made. Oh, you're just being a hater. You know, go Alexandria. Beto O'Rourke has stepped into the presidential campaign, and he's basically out there with the human-caused global warming. He's claiming the world faces catastrophe and warns hundreds of millions of climate refugees will overwhelm the borders, and humanity could go extinct unless we fix the planet in 12 years. Interesting how that number keeps coming on up from multiple sources. 12 years. Let's see. 12 plus 19 is... Anyway. That sort of lines up a little bit with the Agenda 30 timeline. It's crazy. It's just crazy here. More from the documents, the testimony of Lisa Page. Apparently, Peter Strzok's enthusiasm about helping the Mueller probe and hopefully impeaching Trump would advance his own career. He wanted that notch on his gun handle. So he's not being motivated by a sense of duty or justice or an awareness of an actional crime. It was just this idea of if I help get Trump, it's gonna look really good on my resume here. By the way, the House of Representatives just unanimously passed a non-binding resolution that the entire Mueller report be made public. And if, as has been leaked by insiders, there's really nothing concrete in that Mueller report, the Democrats will have shot themselves in the foot. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our honor affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. Remember, okay, we've got a call on the line. Let's go to the White Rose in Colorado. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Thanks for taking my call. This is back to what you mentioned about the Jews looking for doing a genetic search, looking for whatever they're looking for.
Well, they claim they're looking for a Jewish gene, but other geneticists are saying there is no such thing.
Right, there is no such thing. Okay, so I could tell you this because I lived amongst a prominent Miami Jewish family for 21 years. I married into it, so I was been in direct contact with what these poor Jewish people believed to be the truth, what they were taught by their rabbis. Okay,
yes,
that they're Jewish and there's a Jewish religion and all this stuff, and so this is what I like to mention. Okay, there is no such thing as a Jewish religion or Jewishness. There is no such thing as Catholics or Catholicism. There is no such thing as Islam or Muslimism. There is no such thing as Christianity. All there is Mystery Babylon. Okay, and the reason why the Jews are looking for the Jewish gene, they're not looking for the Jewish gene, they're looking for a Levite. They're looking for a Levite that's a Levite, that could be a Levite priest that can safely go down into the grotto below the second temple, which exists a couple hundred yards away from the one they think is where the temple was.
Yes.
Right? But in this grotto, a man named the heck was this? Ron Wyatt, back in the 80s and 90s, early 90s, did some archaeological discoveries, and he found the real, actual Ark of the Covenant in this grotto underneath the Second Temple, right? Not the one.
Now that should have been headlines around the world. Why did we not hear about that?
Okay, no, but he made a mistake and gave them the information.
Gave who the information?
He brought blood samples off the top of the Ark of the Covenant, and brought it to a testing laboratory in Tel Aviv, and they tested it, and they found that the blood samples only contained 24 chromosomes, 23X and 1Y. Okay.
Wait a minute. First of all, hang on a second. Your genetic science is a little bit bad. Second of all, DNA in blood on top of a box in that environment is not going to last all those years and remain intact and testable. So I have to tell you.
Yes, I agree. I agree with you.
Okay. Where are you going with this? Where are you going with this?
Okay. Well, the reason why you're looking for a Levi priest is because back in the 80s, when Ron Wyatt discovered this thing, they sent 6 men in there to try to pull the Ark of the Covenant down, and they were all struck dead. And they've been sitting on this secret for all these years.
I'm having a real hard time accepting this. I mean, we've seen all these TV shows about Ark. Stop. Let me speak here. If Ron had found the Ark of the Covenant, it would have been headline news around the world. And I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time with your story. So thank you for the phone call, and we're going to switch over to David in California. Aloha, David. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I wasn't going to talk about that, but I'll just make one small comment. Sometimes certain agencies have a real way of hushing the truth anyways. But what I wanted to talk about was on the climate, so-called climate change and all this, is one of the best videos I ever see, even though it's in poor condition, but the audio is very good in it. It was this guy from Colorado, George W. Hunt. He's passed away, I think, around 2014. But he went in 1987. He was trying to help his son get some kind of ecological job. And it was cost $600 to go to this weekend event that was an ecological meeting. But he got someone laid a ticket on him. He went there, and he was so surprised to see. He saw David Rockefeller there, James Baker, the Secretary of State, whatever he was. There was Brundtland from Norway, and then of course you know who Maurice Strong is from Canada that had the land up in Colorado. Now, Maurice Strong was a big oil CEO of at least one CEO of one oil company. Then he worked in another oil company up in Canada. Then when Maurice Strong introduced Edmund D. Rothschild to speak about the importance of a World Conservation Bank, which the new name GEF, which is Global Environmental Facility now, it's under GEF. So there's articles on that, how and plus that video is great. I think it's called 1992 Onset Summit. Onset is UNCED Summit. And it's remarkable the information he got. So he studied economics a little, so he knew he was on to what was going on. Basically, which we all know in the RBN, in name of saving Bambi, it's a big land grab, right? For the most part, and population control. It's more dire, like how we could. You can't, like in the Great Global Warming Swindle, when this one black African guy was, interviewed. He goes, "Yeah, great, take it away, all our, our technology, so we can grow more food and stuff in the name of, not having all these carbons, so it can lead into depopulation, not feeding the people and this and that." And one other comment, this guy, Matt Ridley, who's English, similar to Lord Monckton. I looked at Lord Monckton on one of these tapes, and Matt Ridley said there was a satellite, its main function was to watch the greening on the planet. And since the oil, since we had massive use of oil in the last 100 years or so, it's not in spite of the oil, but because of the oil use, there's much more green, much more food, much more trees. Okay?
Yeah, of course that makes sense, because the more carbon dioxide there is in the atmosphere, the faster and taller plants will grow. I know the EPA says carbon dioxide is a pollutant. No, it isn't. It's plant food.
I agree with you. And I think this is just a theory, but what I really think with some of these devious, nefarious people on the top, not the millions of good environmentalists, like most of us are sensible, and I don't know if we're environmentalists, but we want to take care of the environment. But I think this whole attack on CO2 goes into what you call the depopulation. It's trying to villainize something that helps support life.
Okay, and well, basically going all the way back to the beginning of your phone call here, I'm not surprised those people were at that summit. They've been at many of these so-called environmental summits, and they're always talking about the need for a global system of control. And as I pointed out many times, this plan for a new world order rests on a foundation of 3 pillars, of which one was human-caused global warming, requiring a global environmental authority or global control system. The second was going to be a global pandemic, which would force everybody to surrender their sovereignty to a global medical authority. And the third was going to be a massive economic collapse, which would force everybody to surrender their sovereignty to a global private central bank. And so, yeah, you were definitely in the thick of it. Anyway, listen, David, got to let you go. We got callers pouring in on the line, and we're going to switch over to Jim in Chicago. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. Couple of things. Congresswoman AOC, she can't run for president because she's only 29 or 30.
You're absolutely right. She fails the age test.
Yeah, so people need to really understand that.
But on the other hand, they were running Ted Cruz for the presidency, and he wasn't even a natural-born citizen.
Well, this is true. This is true. So the other comment, I read an article in the Foreign Press this week where when Trump and the head of North Korea were meeting, I think like 3 of them, South Koreans broke into the North Korean embassy in Paris and roughed up some people. Did you read that?
I remember vaguely reading something like that, but it may have been a false flag.
Yeah, because this article also stated maybe that's why Kim decided to, not meet with Trump anymore and started going back to his missile testing again.
Well, no, I think the reason that Kim Jong-un basically has broken off negotiations is because Trump wasn't negotiating. Trump was out there just saying, give us what we want, and then we'll do something nice for you. Sorry, I'm multitasking. I'm trying to do too many things at once.
So basically, Trump was demanding.
Yeah. He wanted an unconditional surrender by Kim Jong-un, and that was not going to happen.
Right. Well, Michael, I'm going to let you go. You take care.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And we're going to switch over to Sandra in Houston. Aloha, Sandra. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Sandra, are you there?
Hello?
Hello, Sandra, you're on the air.
Hello?
You're on the air.
Okay. I was calling about Alexandria Cortez, and one of the things I was calling about is I had heard that she publicly talked about running, and she didn't even know that she wasn't old enough, like the other caller pointed out. And I was going to ask you on her Green New Deal, does she really have Democrats behind her on this?
Well, she's got her following that are behind it. She's got all the environmentalists, and again, it's really more about economics than the environment. It's socialism wrapped in a green wrapper. But it can't be made to work is the real problem. And anybody who's taken a close look at the details about what she wants, they can't figure out how is this going to work. But Alexandria, she operates like this. During the campaign, she was out there talking about all these things we were going to give away to people. And one of the TV newscasters asked her, well, how are we going to pay for it? And she says, well, we'll just pay for it. And he said, how? How are you going to pay for it? She said, well, we'll just pay for it. And it was like the idea that they're going to have to get the money from someplace just wasn't clicking with her. And again, socialism only works until you run out of other people's money.
Right. Well, when I say Democrats, I mean like people in power in Washington. Are there any of those people, in your opinion, that are against her, or is it just all Republicans?
I think there have been a couple of Democrats that have expressed skepticism over the Green New Deal, but off the top of my head, I can't remember who they were.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. We're going to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And once again, we're putting on our beggar's rags and holding our hand out because we need your help. Republic Broadcasting needs you because it costs money to run these operations, pay hosting services, electric bills, and replace equipment, which does wear out. If you think about it, RBN's equipment is just, it's on for, pretty much the whole day, every day, and it does wear out. So if you can help, now's the time to do it because you can see how serious things are getting. The postal address where you can send a check, a money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a debit or credit card donation or pledge to be a recurring subscriber is 800-724-2719, extension 1 during business hours, extension 3 at all other times. Okay, getting on back to our domestic news here. Remember Nellie Orr, wife of former high-ranking Justice Department official Bruce Orr. They were both involved in the investigation to the Trump 2016 presidential campaign. It's now come out that she worked for the Central Intelligence Agency as an independent contractor for as long as 6 years. And remember what David Ferry said, once CIA, always CIA. Once you're in, you are in for life. But apparently Orr was hired as a researcher by Fusion GPS, which was, of course, the company hired by the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee to produce the now infamous Steele dossier in 2015. So, little networks there. Okay, Jussie Smollett had his first day in court. He pled not guilty to 16 counts of disorderly conduct stemming from his hate crime hoax. And Smollett's lawyer, Tina Glandian, entered the plea on Smollett's behalf just hours after Judge Stephen Watkins was assigned the case. The next court date is April 17th. Now, Smollett was originally charged with just one count of lying to the authorities, but last week a grand jury indicted Smollett on 16 felony accounts of lying to authorities, 8 counts for what he told the officer who responded to the report of January 29th attack in downtown Chicago, and 8 counts for what he later told a detective about being the victim of a brutal, racist, and homophobic beating by 2 masked men. And here's where it gets interesting. Michelle Obama's former chief of staff, Tina Chen, apparently attempted to have the Jussie Smollett case transferred from the Chicago Police Department to the FBI, according to texts and emails released by the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. So that's interesting. Why does the FBI want to take it over? Why is this Tina Chen getting involved? And basically, I'm having a hard time figuring this one out. I mean, this guy's in a lot of trouble. But apparently they're asking the FBI to take over the investigation. Well, I don't know that there's all that much to investigate. And Jacob Wall is a filmmaker, and he did this documentary on Ilhan Omar, was very biased, very slanted. And during the course of the making of the documentary, he claimed that he was receiving death threats. And when Wool received a suspension from Twitter for making multiple fake accounts, it was revealed he created an account whose avatar matches up exactly with the avatar of the death threat Wall said he received. So it looks like he was faking a hate crime against himself. And he's going to be in trouble. Oh, my goodness. Over at AIPAC likes to portray itself as truly bipartisan, but that may be shifting because the scandals of Israel and awareness that Israel is, in fact, influencing our internal politics. Some politicians are starting to distance themselves, and they're actually starting to slide over to J Street, which is a relatively new pro-Israel lobbying group. And you also have how American Jews are starting to change their view regarding the increasingly hardline and conservative Israeli policies. So there's a bit of a political split. And AIPAC's agenda may be more attractive to Republicans than to Democrats. Democrats may decide they're going on over to J Street. We have to take another break for commercials. We've got a caller waiting on the line, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go back to the phones to John in Tennessee. Aloha, John. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. You know, it's really a shame we have to think this way these days, but here goes. Remember the last time Israel uncorked on Gaza and killed about 2,000 people? 3 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah, they got an international black eye. You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking if Netanyahu uncorks on Gaza again, they'll drop the Mueller report when Netanyahu uncorks on the Gazans again. They've already laid the ground that criticizing Israel is anti-Semitism, so the Omar lady would be up there in Congress going, hello, 4,000 Palestinians were just killed, and they're talking about the Mueller report and Trump. Hello? You know, and I mean, I honestly, I think that's what they do. They get all wrapped up in the Mueller report, and Netanyahu would just uncork on Gaza.
Well, I think that even the corporate media would have to at least briefly report on what Israel was doing, besides which, you know, war and blood make for better audience ratings anyway. You know, the old newsman saying, if it bleeds, it leads. If it thinks, it stinks. And that's just the way it is on the news. But of course, the independent media will be keeping a close eye on what Netanyahu is doing. And again, at this point, I don't think Netanyahu really cares what the rest of the world thinks about him. He is concerned about that upcoming election in April and defeating Benny Gantz. You know, a good war is going to raise his poll numbers because people don't like to change leaders. Hello?
Well, Russia today is on the up and up. Russia today is on the up and up. And if Israeli jets were to level a 10-story apartment building in Gaza, I mean, that image is going to go around the world. He's not going to get away with that. You know what I mean? Because that's what he did last time. There were fighter jets. I mean, this one doesn't look like a bottle rocket into an empty parking lot, this one. You know what I mean? And I agree with you. I'm totally cynical going, Israel fired that thing on themselves. The Palestinians don't run around and pool their money and get these big rockets and fire one off. They know what's going to happen if they were to do something like that, you know?
Yes.
So, I'm just, like I said, I'm totally cynical about it, and I think, like you had said, Netanyahu's just itching to do something to get his base out to the polls or whatever he's got to do, and killing Palestinians is good politics. I think he's going to uncork, and this media over here needs something to brush that aside or minimalize it. And it might be the Mueller report. They on us for 2 months now. They're ready to drop it. It's a big nothing burger, but you know the left-wing media is going to say, oh, it's everything.
Yeah, well, Adam Schiff has already said that they're going to subpoena all of Mueller's evidence and they're going to reinvestigate it themselves. So they're going to keep this thing going. Or there could be some other manufactured distraction. But again, I don't think Netanyahu cares about what the rest of the world is thinking. And so it's not going to be a big issue for him.
Well, Russia Today does a good job of giving Israel a black eye. I mean, they really do. So,
yes.
I'm kind of happy for that. All right, Mike. Take care.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Get on back here to internal politics. All right. So let's talk about this college admissions fraud. And apparently the way that they were getting these kids into these prestige schools, in some cases, they were bribing coaches to get some rich kid brought in for the team, because the coaches go out to the high schools, they watch the games, they recruit athletes because college sports is a big money maker for the college, and so they'll go on out and say, oh, this guy is really good, I saw him play, I want him on my team, he needs to have a scholarship or he needs to be admitted. And it kind of makes you wonder if some uncoordinated individual winds up on a team where they really shouldn't be, and they wind up losing the game. And apparently others are basically lying about their ethnicity to take advantage of affirmative action programs or affirmative action admissions. And that's not new. Remember, Barack Obama, when he went to college, he claimed to be a foreign student from Kenya. And he wasn't really from Kenya. I mean, the birthers seized on that, but he was born here in Honolulu. But it helped him get in. And it's just another form of cheating. All right, there's been another article out here. This is from Mint Press News, and it's talking about Captain Marvel. And I guess the word is getting out that this is pretty awful. And this Captain Marvel is a perfect case study for how the United States military uses Hollywood to spread propaganda, because the U.S. military is at the center of the plot. The film's protagonist, Carol Danvers, is a former U.S. Air Force pilot who becomes a superhero after absorbing the powers of an advanced technology created by another U.S. military scientist. And that scientist happens to be a member of the advanced alien race known as the Kree, who, for unexplained reasons, decided to do groundbreaking military research of all the places in the universe, the U.S. of A. So the film bombards viewers with 2 hours of nonstop U.S. military propaganda. It's not even subtle. At the plot's climax, Captain Marvel changes the colors of her suit to red, white, and blue to match the American flag. So that explains why you have Rotten Tomatoes deleting negative reviews, why you had that one politician say, well, there ought to be a law. There should be a law against posting negative reviews about movies. They apparently invested a lot of money and a lot of time making this movie, and they want people to see it. And the people who have seen it are saying it's terrible, it's a stinker. I certainly have no intention of seeing it, even for the special effects. Alrighty, getting on back to the problems with Boeing. The Boeing 737 MAX 8 and MAX 9 planes will remain grounded for weeks until the updates to faulty software are tested. This is coming from the FAA, which only a few days ago was saying, oh, the planes are absolutely fine here. You can keep going with them. But apparently other pilots of the MAX 8 and MAX 9 have come forward saying they had their own episodes where the plane's automatic systems kept dipping the nose down. Fortunately, they didn't crash like these other two did, but there's an issue. It seems to be with that stall indicator sending erroneous data. I'm sure Airbus is stepping into the vacuum that Boeing has created for itself. Boeing has halted all deliveries of 737 MAXs until they can say this problem is taken care of. But this is a black eye for Boeing. There's no question about it. Airbus, I'm sure, is rushing on in to customers who are sitting on the fence and saying, well, you know, look, you can have the 737 MAX, or you can have a new Airbus. I think a lot of companies are going to go for the Airbus. And they may have competition because China is just now getting ready for to enter the international aviation market with the Comac C919. And it's still undergoing trials. They're still testing it out, but it's going to enter service and be available for sale in 2021. By the way, as a side note, and I'm only saying this because I live here, but apparently a survey by the Department of Transportation on who's the most punctual airline pointed to our own Hawaiian Airlines as the most punctual carrier in the U.S., with 87% of its services arriving on time. Frontier Airline was the worst, which was on time just 69.4% of the time. You know something I really hate about the airlines? When the flight has been delayed, you know, that little clock at the airport, you're waiting for somebody to arrive or you're waiting for your flight to arrive, and it's been delayed for an hour, they don't back the arrival time back by an entire hour. They'll back it by a few minutes, and then a couple of minutes later, a few minutes more. So you don't realize that you actually have time to go on out and get a hamburger or something. Okay, let's talk about the economic news. This is a little troubling here. Apparently, U.S. banks report $251 billion, with a B, of, quote, unrealized losses, unquote. Now, this is a little bit of chicanery because all of the 5,406 FDIC insured banks showed a net income in the fourth quarter of last year of $59 billion due to higher net operating revenue and lower income tax expense. They're making it sound like they're making money, but they aren't really, because they've got these investment securities, and because they have not yet been sold, they're not included in the net income figures above, and they stand at $251 billion. And they call it unrealized losses, but they're basically paper losses. But at some point, the bank's going to have to absorb that money, or more accurately, the taxpayers here. The brouhaha between Germany and the United States over Huawei is continuing to escalate. The former German Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder basically came on out and said, this is blatant extortion by the United States, which, as you know, is telling Germany not to buy equipment from Huawei and buy it from the United States, or the United States intelligence agencies will stop talking to the German intelligence agencies. Now, what we're talking about here is 5G. It is the coming thing. It is a big moneymaker. And China got to the gate first. The U.S. is playing catch-up. All righty. Mercer came out with their annual quality of life factors. All American cities but one fell this year, and no American city ranks in the 30 best places to live. Vienna ranked number one in terms of quality of living. I think you had to go down to 32 for where they said San Francisco had a good quality of life, as long as you're staying out of the areas where the homeless and the refugees are and everything. Honolulu came in at 37, for what that is worth here. Over in Israel, there's been a new report by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development saying that Israel has the highest rate of poverty of any country. And the rates are excessive. I mean, there's a lot of money pouring into Israel, but like the United States, it's concentrated at the top. And you have the Palestinians and the Bedouin and the various other groups that are kept in a deplorable condition, and they drag the country's poverty rate down. All right, let's talk about immigration. And the fight is continuing to go on about the wall and trying to cancel the national emergency, and they're just going back and forth about this whole thing. But while this is all being put on at the national level, lower level courts are eviscerating immigration enforcement. And conservatives fear that extreme Democrats are working to actually abolish ICE and all immigration enforcement, and yes, they are. And the lower courts have already started doing that, nullifying immigration enforcement statutes, violating separation of powers, and constantly increasing the wave of bogus asylum seekers that they originally spawned with other radical rulings. The latest ruling from the Ninth Circuit, and oh boy, are they a problem. If Republicans and the president begin pushing back against these radical judges and delegitimize their rulings, they're going to be in trouble. Democrats will get everything they want without ever facing electoral backlash or even the need to win elections anymore. We're being invaded and taken over. So apparently what the Ninth Circuit did, for the first time in our history, the courts have fabricated a constitutional right for those denied asylum to appeal to federal court for any reason. Well, I have a newsflash for you. For your constitutional rights to apply to you, you must be a citizen of this country. And that's where the Ninth Circuit veered away from reality. Meanwhile, ICE officers are growing frustrated with Trump over the border. I mean, they supported Trump in 2016, and now they're getting angry with his lack of follow-through on all of his border-related promises and not just the wall. Trump, his promise to end the practice of arresting migrants, giving them court dates, and then letting them go free, known as catch and release. It's not only failed to pan out, it's gone into overdrive. And instead of rounding up criminals who are in the United States illegally, Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers say they're being underutilized for mundane tasks such as opening the doors on vans to release immigrants already caught by Border Patrol agents. Agents with the Border Patrol, which is a separate law enforcement agency from ICE, reportedly don't fill out their own paperwork to open the doors because the agency's leaders don't want to be part of catch and release. I mean, this is just getting silly. All right, over in Great Britain, developments there. The UK Parliament has rejected the no-deal Brexit, although it's not necessarily legally binding, and they just voted to extend the deadline for Brexit by another 3 months. And I'm hoping the British people are going to express their ire over that in a peaceful manner, of course. But if they get away with this, then what's going to happen 3 months from now? Oh, we're going to extend it for another 6 months. Well, let's save some time. We're going to extend it for six months. Let's extend it for another couple of years. That's where this is headed. All right, we're going to be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And apparently somebody who didn't want to come on the air was asking a question. Does computer software company exemption apply to 737 MAX crashes? That is a very complicated question. And first of all, you mean the indemnification. I am not sure, because I presume that Boeing is writing its own software. So it's not a question. And the indemnification, by the way, is for civil litigation. But I think people just suing Boeing as a whole, it would not come into play there. All right, we were talking about Great Britain and Brexit, And Parliament voted by a large majority to extend the Brexit until June 30th. Then they voted down a resolution to hold a new referendum. But I expect that'll come up every few weeks between now and June 30th. They're just going to drag this thing out. The Remainers want to keep Britain in the EU. Soros wants to keep the EU glued together. He worked so hard and spent so much of his money to start his New World Order, and now it's starting to unravel in front of his eyes here. But the end result is that Britain's political system, like ours, is starting to tear itself apart. And the British people, I think, are paying attention. Over in Italy, Salvini is still basically showing the way to win on this immigration issue. Italy and Hungary right now are basically standing firm against Brussels' continued pressure to open their borders and just let those refugees in. So what? A few daughters get raped. It's a small price to pay for the New World Order and globalism. And basically, again, this article says, supported by George Soros Open Societies Foundation. And they're just pouring them in. They're trying to get around laws on immigration by rescuing migrants at sea. So they're not really breaking down Europe's borders. This is a rescue. And these migrants, basically, they've barely left the coast of North Africa. Just swim out a little way, they're picked up by the ships. Oh, we had to rescue these people at sea and bring them to Italy. And it just keeps on going. It really, really does. It's insane here. Over in Hungary, there was a recent document by the Legal Service of the European Commission which revealed the greatest lie by Brussels, according to Hungary's Foreign Minister, Peter Szijjártó. And he claims the document suggests that secret efforts are underway to make the UN Migration Compact mandatory in all EU member states. Now, the UN Migration Compact is something that the globalists came up with that basically said everybody has a right to go anywhere else that they want. And it looks like Brussels is going to try and jam it down every one of the EU member states, especially Italy and Hungary. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, do you remember this guy named Jamie Shoup? He's a biological male, and he made international headlines when an Oregon judge granted him a legal status as a non-binary person, legally shedding gender designations that he felt oppressed his true identity as a woman. And he became the first American granted this legal status, and he was this huge hero with the LGBTQ, LSMFT, BFD, PDQ community. Well, he's transitioned back. He says he wants to be a man, and that being transgender really didn't work out. And he said in a lot of it, he felt like he was being actually encouraged by, counselors, if you will, to go that way. So basically, Shoup says that he attributes his former gender confusion to post-traumatic stress disorder and suffered a severe mental health crisis in 2013 and childhood trauma. By the way, the guy's a veteran. And he laments how out-of-control transgender activism enabled the medical community to indulge his gender fantasies amid this temporary life crisis. And he says this is a problem that is becoming more widespread. He says the best thing that could have happened would have been for someone to order intensive therapy. Instead, the doctors just kept helping me to harm myself. I think a while back we were talking about all the transgenderism in schools right now, and researchers had discovered that the more transgender activism there was on the campus, the more kids were saying, yeah, I think I'm transgender. They're being sold on this idea. They're being indoctrinated to think about it. Now, this next story, this is a little bit out there. And apparently there was, a while back, was this 11-year-old drag queen who danced at a gay nightclub while adults threw dollar bills at him. 11 years old, wearing a blonde wig, high heels, a girl's crop top, and full makeup. And he was dancing to No Doubt's Just a Girl at the $3 Bill Club in Brooklyn. This happened last December. It triggered a wave of outrage when the story broke. Somebody got this 11-year-old drag queen on video, posted it on social media. And apparently more than 150 people complained with the city's Administration for Children's Services, who basically came on down and said, nah, there's no abuse here. There's no abuse. I think there was. Alrighty, modern education. It's all about indoctrination. Article out of needtoknow.news about how college courses are clearly training students to become socialists. That they're not about education, they're about indoctrination for progressive ideology instead of training young adults for their future careers. And a recent poll showed that 49.6% of millennials and Generation Z would prefer to live in a socialist country, which has enormous implications for the future of our society. Progressives have a stranglehold on higher education in the U.S., and they're training future generations of leaders to think just the way they do. And the list of classes that teach socialism include great political thinkers, Machiavelli to Marx, ecofeminism, global hip-hop and social justice, racial capitalism, queering the Bible. I think we talked about that one before. Queering childhood and more. So let's see. Harvard University, Who's a Fascist Culture and Politics on the Radical Right. Princeton University, Marx in the 21st Century. Yale University, Progressivism, Theory and Practice. University of Alabama, Oppression and Social Justice. University of Florida, that's the one that's doing ecofeminism. University of Kentucky, Inequalities in Society. University of Missouri, Promoting Social Justice, Diversity and Inclusion. Middlebury College, Beyond Intersectionality, Developing Anti-Racist and Anti-Capitalist Feminisms. Middlebury College again, Economics of Discrimination. So they're all gung-ho, they want to live in a socialist utopia. I wonder how they're going to feel about socialism when those student loans come due. And again, how does one get a job taking courses like that? And I understand that they're taking other courses as well. But it just seems like education has been junked up, and not just at the university level. You know, we've been highly critical of Common Core all these years, and even Bill Gates admitted that it was a disaster for American education. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. As you know, Facebook and its affiliated systems, Instagram, and I think a couple of others, went down on Wednesday and triggered a lot of concern and fury and withdrawal symptoms, to be very honest. Lindsay Lohan was out there on Twitter just giving her vent and adding it with an obscenity that was written in Russian, which Lindsay can speak. A lot of people were out there saying, had to be a hack, had to be the Russians, had to be Syria, had to be Venezuela. Venezuela's revenge for the hack on their power structure. Facebook, of course, is denying hackers were behind its biggest ever blackout. Facebook is saying there was a database overload that locked users out of the social network, Instagram and WhatsApp, for more than 14 hours, and some people still can't access their accounts. So collecting too much of everybody's personal data, I guess. Just filled up all those hard drives. During the Facebook outage, Telegram apparently got 3 million signups. And the founder of the messaging service said Thursday that people flocked to Telegram during the long Facebook outage that knocked out not only its namesake, but again, WhatsApp and Instagram. And I would imagine probably other Facebook-esque social media platforms also saw some new people signing up, which they should to get away from the censorship. But a lot of people can have a bit of product inertia. Yeah, I know it's not the best product, but it's what I'm used to, and all my friends know that I'm here, and so forth and so on. But already we're starting to see the humor come on out. There's already talk about I survived the great social media outage of 2019. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a T-shirt about that. Even Denny's came on out. Denny's restaurant came on out saying Facebook may be down, but Denny's is open 24 hours a day. So it's a bit of a black eye, but it's not Facebook's worst issue. Federal prosecutors are probing Facebook's illicit data sharing partnerships, reportedly subpoenaing data from smartphone manufacturers as the regulatory walls appear to close in on the beleaguered social media firm. Now, a New York grand jury has subpoenaed 2 device makers' records as part of a criminal investigation into some of the 150-plus dubiously legal data partnerships Facebook forged with technology companies and other large corporations. All right. Over at Natural News, they're issuing a call trying to find a law firm unwilling to take a $1 billion class action lawsuit against Twitter. And Twitter basically dumped Natural News, and Natural News is deciding to fight back. And they want to make this a class action lawsuit so that everybody who's been banned by Twitter can jump on in with that. Of course, Natural News is one of thousands of users who've been silenced by Twitter without warning, without justification, and without any means of recourse. Twitter continues to silence thousands of channels based on political point of view. And in the case of Natural News, silencing challenges to the vaccine orthodoxy. So they're really laying it on thick. By the time 2020 gets here, conservatives just will be invisible. All right, let's take a phone call. Paul in New Jersey. Aloha. Paul, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael.
Yes.
I'd like to advocate what I consider strategic voting for disenfranchised Republicans who feel disaffected by the way Donald Trump has been performing in the White House.
Yeah.
And what I urge people to do as Republicans is go down to your local election board and switch parties and jump to the Democrats for 2020. And there's a reason for this. For one, politicians, if you become beholden to one party, after a time, they take you for granted and they ignore you and they treat you like crap, really. And you can see that the way blacks have been treated by the Democratic Party lately. So it's kind of like in a love relationship. If you're willing to walk out the door, you get all the respect in the world from your girlfriend.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Showing the ability I've had it, I'm leaving. And then they come back to you like, please, please don't leave. And I think the same thing applies to politicians. They only respect you if you're going to leave. And I do see that often with politicians, the first act of an elected politician is to kick their core constituency right in the teeth, right? Because they know where you're going to go, right? So now I understand that Donald Trump is better than many of the Democrats, but I think it's a smart strategy that Republicans can pick who the Democratic candidate is or affect the election of a Democratic candidate. Now, you can pick a Democratic candidate who's more like a Republican. So then when you can choose between Trump, you can choose between somebody who, if Trump does lose in the general election, then that person
Paul, I need to
somewhat
step
palatable.
in here. Paul, I need to step in here because I've heard about what you're suggesting, and actually, there were allegations all the way back in 2016 that Democrats had switched over to the Republican Party to try and basically keep Trump away from that nomination. So I really don't feel like advocating any more election fraud or election shenanigans than we already have. And I think people need to stay in the party that most suits their political point of view, which could be Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green, necktie party, whichever one you want to go with, and vote the candidates and vote the issues. And we have too many people who vote the straight party line. But I got to tell you, at this point, it's almost moot because by the time we get to 2020, the election system is going to be so fouled up between illegal immigrants being allowed to vote, between legalized vote harvesting. It's going to be another massively stolen election. And we're already hearing about potential challengers to Trump in the Republican primaries. And I think Trump is a one-term president. The big issue is going to be when is the shakeout of the Democrats going to begin? And is Hillary, in fact, planning on stepping back in, which would be, in my opinion, a nightmare.
Right. However, be honest, you like Tulsi Gabbard, and I've heard favorable things about Andrew Yang and some of these other alternative candidates who are more dovish and go along with my non-neocon agenda. So I think it's a great thing to pressure Trump, the thought that he's going to lose his base, you see, and that's holding his feet to the fire because Trump has basically not delivered, and I don't believe, as informer callers have said, that it's because of the Republicans of the House. I think it's because of the way Trump mismanaged these things. I mean, we haven't
or the way that Trump is being managed. Okay, Trump already knows he's betrayed his base. Trump already knows he's betrayed his base. He doesn't care.
Exactly. So I think I'm going to stand by my point. By the way, for me to switch parties to drive to my election board is perfectly legal. So for me to go switch to being a Democrat now within 5 months of the primary in the state of New Jersey is perfectly legal. It's perfectly fine. And so I am going to be doing that because I'm basically disgusted that Trump let these neocons in the party. And the great message, if more people do it, we send a message to future candidates in the Republican Party that if you're going to run as a nationalist and then turn out to be Mr. Neocon himself, right?
Yeah.
Then you're going to leave and shop for new candidates. And that's the way it is. Now, I'd love to see another Republican step forward to take him on. I don't see that. And I don't see any person even in the party being able to defeat Trump in a primary. So that's why I think strategically is to take my vote and shop elsewhere. And so Tulsi Gabbard, to me, looks great. She's not perfect. A lot of these leftist agendas. But by the way, some of these leftist agendas are things that Trump is doing anyway when he has the homosexual ambassador in Germany going around promoting tolerance of homosexuality overseas.
Yeah.
That's pretty much straight from the left as is.
Yeah, it very much is. Anyway, listen,
Yeah.
Paul, I understand what you're saying. I cannot agree with you or encourage that. There were too many people playing too many games with the election system, and this is just more gaming. And in any event, I think the message would be lost on Donald Trump. I think it would be lost on the GOP as a whole because we do live in an age where the elections are just so crooked. The American people as a whole are disenfranchised. And when this nation collapses and we restart it back up again, I'm hoping that somebody will pay attention to that article I have on my website on how to have honest elections, because it is workable. And along with, again, strictly enforced campaign donation limits so the ultra-rich can't just buy the government that they want, which is what we saw Sheldon Adelson, the Koch brothers, and George Soros do. Anyway, listen, we're going to let you go and switch over to...
Thank you, sir.
All right, have a good day. We're going to switch over to W in Texas. Aloha, W. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, Mike, I just wanted to mention you were talking about the quality of life ranking.
Yes.
And about 2 weeks ago, there was a different quality of life survey. It's from a website called Worldwide Rankings. I just wanted to mention that And follow-up was, if possible, if you could get Jimmy Dore to interview him, because I listen to a wide range of different folks on the internet. And it's funny, even though people have different ideological and political stances, it's a lot of things that a lot of people agree on that they do not waver on. And I think it would be a really interesting conversation between you all if you could get him up on your show one day. That'd be awesome.
Well, I'll certainly approach him and see about maybe we'll trade interviews. I interview him on my show, and he interviews me on his show.
Cool. Let me add one third thing. This is it. The whole reparations thing. There's a lot of black people that are, have been in the Democratic camp for a long time, including myself. But I've wavered. I moved over to the independent side of things now.
Yes.
Over the last couple of years, and this reparations issue, I'm not suggesting that we just have reparations, but what I would suggest, especially for the DNC party, is that they at least say, I support a study. That's all you have to say. If they just say they support a study, there are a lot of black people, I'm telling you, that will stay home and not vote for anybody on the DNC. So that is basically going to give Trump another 4 years if a lot of black folks stay home because of this issue. I'm not saying it's going to be the only thing, but I'm sensing that as I read a lot of websites and stuff, people are going to kind of waver on that issue. So people just say, I support a study. That's it. Just a study on the issue. That would be, I think, a way to move forward. That's it. That's all I want to say.
I think one of the Democratic contenders has already come on out pushing reparations as one of their issues for the campaign. Anyway, listen, need to let you go. Need to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the phone call. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And it's a bad time to be at Facebook. Story out of Zero Hedge. Apparently, some of the top executives are quitting. The chief product officer and the WhatsApp CEO both quit. Facebook's stock took a real hammering today. And yeah, I think they're on their way out. And maybe it will serve as an example on how not to abuse your customers or users. All right, we're going to take another phone call from Raleigh in Minnesota. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I just want to say that it's really good to be a member of what really happened, and I got a big story for you that really got lost in the shuffle with the news. The FDA last month held a committee, and they came up with a unanimous decision about this product called esketamine, which is a variant of the aesthetic ketamine, which they approved as a revolution treatment for anybody that's failed on antidepressants on two different antidepressants. And I don't know if you know anything about ketamine. This is a very dangerous thing to do. It represses higher brain activity, and it's kind of a date rape drug.
Okay.
And it's called it's an SRI too, and they're going to get Johnson & Johnson patent it, and it's going to be like a nasal spray thing.
Okay. Not something I'm going to
take or use. Are you familiar with the Desmond is Amazing, the trans kid? He did an example of how he did ketamine on his YouTube channel just a couple months ago. And ever since he did that example of how he does it, he's kind of had this droopy eyes. So it's associated with it really disassociates the user between morality itself, and it's definitely dissociated aesthetic. And the gentleman that just called right before me promoted the idea of having Jimmy Dore on of the Young Turks Network, and I would suggest to ask him how he feels about this revolution treatment as well, because they're promoting it heavily at that network right now. with this guy named Kyle Kalinske of Secular Talk, who's part of the same network. And yeah, I really feel like this is going to be detriment of our society because it's so tied in with the drug culture and like the rave culture and promiscuous sex, with people that, could easily be swayed to just kind of like, because like one of the side effects is poor judgment, blurry vision, and really makes you an animal.
Raleigh, we're almost out of time on this segment here. I mean, is there a point to all of this?
Yeah, the promotion of having ketamine in mainstream society, like with the talk circuit nowadays, is very alarming to me.
Well, unfortunately, we do live in a country in which pharmaceutical companies are allowed to advertise their products in all of the media, and not just the independent media. And I agree that it is a problem. And they're doing it as much to control the media as much as to boost the sales. Anyway, Raleigh, thank you very much. We're going to let you go here and get on back to the news here. We're talking about computers, and apparently Google has been forced to remove 210 apps from their Google Play Store. And apparently they totaled 150 million installs after outside researchers discovered they contained aggressive adware. And I know the advertisers are getting abusive. It's a problem that I'm dealing with here at What Really Happened all the time. But the advertisers are desperate for your attention. And the overall plan is they want to turn the internet into just another advertising platform and content delivery platform. And you just sit there and you absorb the ads. And, you will go out and buy whatever. Here's a story that I think is a little shocking. It's about this Ernest Quintana, who was taken to the hospital in an ambulance, unable to breathe, had chronic lung disease, and they took him to Kaiser Permanente Medical Center in Fremont, California, and he was apparently informed that he was about to die by this robot with a television feed of the doctor who was somewhere else in the hospital. And the family is understandably upset about that, and I would be too. It almost gets back to one of the caller's comments about, is there too much automation? I'd say in this case, yes. Whatever happened to bedside manner? But apparently they've got these robots doing the rounds, and the doctors just sit there with a screen and a camera talking to the patients. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones here to James in South Carolina. Aloha, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, why do you think Trump is acting like he is? Do you think he was a plant from the start? Do you think he's compromised? I'm very disappointed.
I'm very disappointed, too. I'm having a hard time figuring out exactly what's going on. But it does seem like, he's being handled, he's being managed. He's turned out to be a very weak leader. When he came into the White House, he should have just cleaned out that staff and brought in all new people. But that he didn't. He wanted to be magnanimous in victory. That was his first mistake. And, of course, he owed his financial backers large favors, people like Sheldon Adelson, who are the ones who insisted that certain people be brought back into the White House, turning it back into neocon nirvana. And I think maybe these days it's almost like Trump has given up trying to be Trump anymore. And he's just sort of bouncing around from rally to rally and going through the motions and enjoying the fact that he is a president. But it's almost like he's starting to lose enthusiasm for the job.
Well, I find it very strange. I hear some people say he's compromised. Well, I mean, Trump is 72 years old, I think, and I don't think you would have. It's my understanding he spent $100 million of his own money when he ran. That's what was said. I don't know if it's true or not, but I find it hard to believe you went through all that in his knowledgeable as he is about a lot of things, as much as he's been around, I think you could compromise him by compromising his family or something, but I don't think.
Well, it's entirely possible. I mean, don't forget, Trump is known to have visited with Jeff Epstein, and if Epstein's got a video of Trump and an underage lady, I mean, that's it. That's not only impeachment and the end of his political career. That's potential jail time, or there could be something else. It simply could be, death threats. Do as you're told, or we're going to make sure that you're, you get killed or your family gets killed. And I noticed they're starting to put political pressure on Trump's children right now.
Well, the thing about Epstein, it's my understanding that he met Epstein. He knew him slightly, but I don't know that he ever went to that place.
Well, we're going to find out, because supposedly we're coming up on the deadline where the entire case file for the Epstein case is going to be made public to explain why a guy who was a serial abuser of underage girls got off with a wrist slap. And, of course, I'm not going to be surprised if at the last minute the court changes its mind and says, oh, no, we can't let this out. It all depends on how many big names are in that file.
Well, my opinion of Trump is that he wanted to do the right thing, whether you agree with him or not, but he's not doing it.
Nope, he's not.
Doing some things, but it's a conundrum. It's very frustrating.
It is very frustrating, and I imagine it's discouraging to the people who supported him and voted for him. He's not going to have that same base in 2020. The people who supported him and worked hard to get him into that White House back in 2016, we're not going to go through that again.
Well, if it's him and virtually any Democrat, except maybe Tulsi, then it looks like to me it's over. I don't know what the people are going to have to rise up themselves. The country is not going to be saved by the politicians. The people will have to take over some way or another.
Well, again, I'm seeing all the signs that this country is heading for a Soviet Union-style collapse. And what the American people need to do is, first of all, be prepared to go through being cut off from all of those things we're being forced to be dependent on. And second, be ready to start a new country. Are you okay?
Well, there is this.
So let me finish my thought here. I was distracted by my wife. Okay. Go back to the Constitution, the first 13 amendments, and just pick up from there and move forward, and put back in place all the laws we had that kept control of this country in the hands of the people. Strict campaign donation limits. Get rid of that ridiculous Citizens United decision that says corporations are people for the purpose of the First Amendment. And strict border controls, no more private central bank. That's number one on my list. So
it seems to me, though, that the powers that be have so much power that they may be able to pull some of this stuff off. I mean, like the universal income and stuff like that, which is to control people. I mean,
well, it is. They're trying to bring back socialism.
If you have total control, huh?
I said, yeah, they're talking socialism, and but of course, as you know, the government in Finland just collapsed, and it was being held aloft as this ideal, this proof that socialism could work, and they just collapsed over there.
Okay, Michael, I appreciate you talking to me.
All right,
thank you.
Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Finishing up on our computer news here, apparently there is yet another WordPress flaw, and WordPress is saying that you have to update to the latest version of 5.1.1, and apparently there's a newly disclosed vulnerability to hack your website. I think the problem here is they turned it into a game. Not to mention a business opportunity. Well, you're infected with malware. Here, let me sell you a piece of software. Claire and I were talking earlier today about the deterioration of email, because we use email a lot, and lately we're getting all these 550 errors command not executed. We don't even know what that stuff means. And just searching around the web, people are sort of vague on what's actually causing all of this. But it seems to happen only when we're using our Spectrum account. Fortunately, we have another email server. And when Claire uses that, she doesn't get these problems. But I understand that email is going through some kind of a change to try and deal with spam. But I think basically a better approach is to basically hunt down the spammers and throw them in jail. I mean, the internet is a critical part of our society, and it is under attack, not just from the spammers, but from the malware writers, the hackers, the ransomware writers. And instead of like trying to do something about that, it's, hey, this is a business opportunity. We'll sell you more security on your server. We'll sell you this tool to get around the email problems. And it's a mess out there. I went on out, did a web search for Spectrum email sucks, and boy, did I get a lot of hits on that. All right, so it's the time in our show for human-caused global warming. Insert ominous music here. And everybody is talking about the bomb cyclone. And for a while, it was looking like corporate media was trying to ignore the fact that snow has still been falling all over this country. But this one, they couldn't. Fox News ran a brief story about the bomb cyclone, which is over the central U.S., and it is a monster. It's hit the Midwest. It's dumped more than a foot of snow in parts of the upper Midwest. Apparently, more than 1,000 drivers are stranded in Colorado right now. And the National Guard has been called in to try and deal with some of this. So it is a mess out there. If you are in the Midwest, stay home, stay warm. Don't leave your home unless there's absolutely have to, because you got to take this one seriously. Okay, here's an interesting little story. It's being reported in Russia Today, and it says the Russian parliament has furthered a bill which seeks to legalize opium poppy growth. And the measure is meant to ensure that Russia has a steady supply of raw materials for producing painkillers to counter possible Western sanctions. Because right now, most of the opioids are going through the United States pharmaceutical corporations based on opium that is primarily right now coming from Afghanistan. So Russia's concerned that there could be sanctions and saying, we're not going to let you have any opium. So they're just going to grow their own. So there's going to be a state monopoly on growing the opium poppies, but they want their own raw materials. They don't want to be dependent on foreign imports. This is another story that shows how bad our society is in decline, and it's from onusa.org. The headline reads, "We can no longer rely on organic standard." And what they're talking about is the U.S. Department of Agriculture's organic seal. It's that little circle with a bar through the middle. It says certified organic. But the problem is there's been a lot of corporate influence on the USDA's organic program to where more and more inorganic materials and inorganic processes are being allowed in. And the USDA really needs to clean up their act, but consumers may want to start looking at alternatives such as the Real Organic Project, which stores like Down to Earth use that. So apparently, concentrated animal feeding operations have taken over the organic egg and dairy industry. According to organic standards, the way they were originally set up, livestock were supposed to have access to the outdoors, fresh air, and sunlight. But the new interpretation allows these concentrated animal feeding operations to confine animals to barns, but add porches, a roof built over a concrete floor with screens as walls, and they can still label their livestock as organic. And this allows these feeding operations to continue to raise millions of chickens or livestock on the cheap in cramped, squalid conditions while charging the organic premium. And yes, you do pay more for organic. All right, back in March of 2015, Monsanto had a problem. The World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer announced that glyphosate, the principal ingredient in Roundup, was probably carcinogenic to humans. I think they would have said definitely, but Monsanto was exerting its political lobbying might even then. So, negative results from the IARC panel, which identifies and evaluates environmental causes of cancer in humans, could mean a potential hit to the company's profitability. Roundup is a major profit generator for Monsanto, especially because it's a repeat product and it's tied in with those GMO seeds. And farmers are now stuck with those GMO seeds because the pollen will just keep on contaminating future crops, even if you're going back to heritage seeds. So Monsanto made nearly $4.76 billion US in sales and $1.9 billion in gross profits from its agricultural productivity sector, most of which is made up of Roundup sales. So a review by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, Radio Canada, of internal Monsanto documents disclosed in the court case of Dwayne Johnson. This is the guy who sued Monsanto, the groundskeeper. And he had a gigantic court settlement, which the judge knocked down to $78 million. And basically these documents show the many efforts the company took to fight the assessment that glyphosate is a probable human carcinogen. The documents also reveal communications between Monsanto and a Canadian firm hired to recruit scientists to publish studies that ultimately defended glyphosate, some of which were secretly reviewed by Monsanto prior to publication. And all those papers were also used as part of Health Canada's reapproval process of glyphosate in 2017. It's all about the politics and the money. And it's rather interesting to hear so many people in government talk about the precautionary principle, but they never apply it. Over in India, the government has decided to cut the royalties from Monsanto seeds for the third time. And these are the royalties paid by Indian seed companies to Monsanto for its GM cotton. And it's being cut from 49% to 20 rupees for a packet of 450 grams. Now, this decision could prompt Monsanto and other foreign seed companies to further scale back investment in the sector. And the decision comes at a time when India's cotton output is falling and needs a breakthrough to help maintain its leading position in the global cotton market. Of course, a few years back, they had that BT cotton disaster, where the government brought in all of this GMO cotton, BT cotton, literally ordered Indian farmers to use it, and only after the plants had been planted and the cotton was growing was it discovered that the GMO version was very sensitive to environmental changes. It was far less tolerant of drought conditions than the natural variety, something that Monsanto had never tested for in the labs. Adverse growing conditions. How do adverse growing conditions affect this product? And a lot of Indian farmers lost their farms. A lot of them committed suicide. Huge numbers committed suicide. And I'm opposed to any more mucking about with the code of life. Because when you look at how sloppy corporations and governments are being with their products, it's only a matter of time before somebody makes a really, really big mistake. And we have an environmental disaster on our hands. I'm hoping they haven't already done that with the epicite gene. That's that GMO corn, which if you eat it, it sterilizes you. So you can't have offspring. It was originally developed with a grant from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and one wonders what they were thinking when they signed that check. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials. We're going to be back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today here. And interesting story coming out of collectivevolution.com, in which the FDA has basically admitted that the government is recommending untested, unlicensed vaccines for pregnant women. This came out of a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit, and the FDA was basically admitted government agencies, including the CDC, are recommending vaccines for pregnant women that have neither been licensed for pregnant mothers by the FDA nor tested for safety in clinical trials. It's just push the product, make money, make money. Now, when the fetus is forming, that is a very delicate time. Anything that damages the fetus at that point, the effects will be multiplied across the entire life. Remember that whole thalidomide scandal? If you don't, look it up. Meanwhile, of course, another article, this out of Brass Check, we are seeing a massive censorship campaign ever. Google, Amazon, Facebook, and they've all lined up to block any information about the dangers of vaccinations. And it was planned out in advance and choreographed to coincide with a recent congressional hearing. Google has changed search results to downplay or make it impossible to find articles about vaccine safety. Amazon has removed books and videos from its store. Facebook has erased long-standing parents groups, not only about the dangers of vaccines, but how to treat children who have been severely injured by them. Apparently, let's see, there was this mother who developed a protocol to treat autistic children, which has succeeded in curing, not controlling, but curing over 500 documented cases of autism. Amazon just took her book and films and everything off with the usual vague violation of community standards. Another article that ought to keep you worried here. More doctors are now confessing to intentionally diagnosing healthy people with cancer to make money. Because chemotherapy and radiation, they're very harmful, very toxic, but boy, do they just bring the money in. The true cure rate under chemotherapy and radiation is under 5%. Now, the cancer industry likes to claim higher rates based on remaining alive for 5 years or remissions that don't last. But even after that, many don't live much longer, or if their overall health is adversely affected, deaths during chemo and radiation are attributed to the disease and never to the treatments. Although it's observed that chemo and radiation do worsen health and even kill. I went through that when my mother passed away because I could never rid myself of the idea. It was the radiation and the chemo that killed her, not the cancer. Anyway, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. Please stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please take what you learn here and share it with everybody that you know. Start exploring the new social media, the up-and-comers, like Telegram. Start developing new social media habits. Just free yourself from those blinders that have been put on you by Google, Facebook, and Twitter. All right? So please donate to RBN. Please donate to whatreallyhappened.com. It's very tight this month. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.